Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Today I want to share a little bit of reading from the early parts of the library book by Susan Orlean, which I have just started reading for Margaret Pennard's book club that she runs through her Patreon. So I will link to that down below. Please go sign up if you'd like to read books with us. We've had some really great choices. This was the month for December, and in October we read Square Haunting by Francesca Wade, and in August we read Greenwood. So really wonderful book choices. And I don't remember what we read before that, but those are the three most recent ones. So by the time these videos go up, I will have finished the library book and likely have already discussed it in Margaret's book club. But I'm still in the early pages of it, early chapters, and I have just been falling in love with the beautiful writing and with Susan Orlean's love for libraries. It's just really speaking to my soul as a bookworm. So I just wanted to share just a couple pages where she's really setting that up. And for those who don't know, this book, The Library Book, is her nonfiction exploration of the Great Fire in the Central Library of Los Angeles in 1986. So it's about sort of her journey of discovering and looking into that event. There was a lot of mystery surrounding that event, and it's beautifully written, and her love of books and libraries is also central in this book so far. So with that said, bear with me while I read a couple pages, or feel free to sign off and go away if you don't want to. But these first pages are just really setting the stage about what the Central Library of Los Angeles is, and then also just setting up her own positioning as she's starting her investigation and her book about it. So we get sort of her positioning as a lover of libraries and what that meant to her in her childhood. Okay, so we're just starting on page 3 here. Central Library, which was designed by the architect Bertram Goodhue and opened in 1926, is in the middle of downtown Los Angeles at the corner of 5th Street and Flower, on the downslope of a rise once known as Normal Hill. The hill used to be higher, but when it was chosen as the site of the library, the summit was clawed off to make it more buildable. At the time the library opened, this part of downtown Los Angeles was a busy neighborhood of top-heavy, half-timbered Victorians teetering on the flank of the hills. These days, the houses are gone, and the neighborhood consists of dour, dark office towers standing shoulder to shoulder, casting long shafts of shade across what is left of the hill. Central Library is an entire city block wide, but it is only 8 stories high, making it sort of ankle height compared to these leggy office towers. It projects a horizontality that it probably didn't in 1926, when it debuted as the high point in what was then a modest, mostly 4-story tall city center. The library opens at 10 a.m., but by daybreak there are always people hovering nearby. They lean against every side of the building, or perch half on and half off the low stone walls around the perimeter, or array themselves in postures of anticipation in the garden northwest of the main entrance, from which they can maintain a view of the front door. They watch the door with unrewarded vigilance, since there is no chance that the building will open earlier than scheduled. One recent warm morning, the people in the garden were clustered under the canopy of trees, and beside the long, trickling watercourse that seemed to emit a small breath of chilled air. Rolling suitcases and totes and book bags were stashed here and there. Pigeons the color of concrete marched in a bossy staccato around the suitcases. A thin young man in a white dress shirt, a hint of sweat wringing his underarms, wobbled on one foot, gripping a file folder under his arm while trying to fish a cell phone out of his back pocket. Behind him, a woman with a sagging yellow backpack sat on the edge of a bench, leaning forward, eyes closed, hands clasped. I couldn't tell if she was napping or praying. Near her stood a man wearing a bowler hat and a too small t-shirt that revealed a half-moon of shiny pink belly. 2 women holding clipboards herded a small, swirling group of kids toward the library's front door. I wandered over to the corner of the garden where 2 men sitting by the World Peace Bell were debating a meal they'd apparently shared. "You have to admit that garlic dressing was good," one of the men was saying. "I don't eat salad." "Oh, come on, man, everyone eats salad." "Not me." Pause. "I love Dr. Pepper." Between each volley of their conversation, the men cast glances at the main entrance of the library where a security guard was sitting. One of the doors was open, and the guard sat just inside, visible to anyone passing by. The open door was an irresistible conversation starter. One person after another approached the guard, and he deflected them without even blinking an eye. "Is the library open yet?" "No, it's not open." "Next." 10 a.m. "Next." "You'll know when it's time." "Next." "Nope, not open yet." "Next." 10 a.m., man," shaking his head and rolling his eyes. 10 a.m., like it says on the sign. Every few minutes, one of the people approaching the guard flashed an identification badge and was waved in, because the library was actually already in gear, humming with staff members who were readying it for the day. The shipping department had been at work since dawn, packing tens of thousands of books into plastic bins. These were books requested at one of the city's 73 libraries, or that had been returned to one in which they didn't belong and were being repatriated, or they were brand new books that had been just cataloged at Central Library and were now on their way to one of the branches. Security guards are at the library around the clock. The guards on duty had started their shift at 6 a.m. Matthew Matson, who runs the library's website, had been at his desk in the basement for an hour, watching the number of website visits surge as the morning advanced. In each of the 8 subject departments throughout the building, librarians and clerks were tidying shelves, checking new books, and beginning the business of the day. The reading tables and carrels were empty, each chair tucked under each table, all enfolded in a quiet even deeper than the usual velvety quiet of the library. In the history department, a young librarian named Lear Heller sorted through a cart of books, weeding out the ones that were damaged or deeply unloved. When she finished, she pulled out a list of books the department wanted to order, checking to make sure they weren't already in the collection. If they passed that test, she would look at reviews and librarian tip sheets to make sure they warranted buying. In the children's department, children's librarians from around the city were gathered in the Puppet Theater for their regular meeting. The topic being discussed was how to run an effective story time. The 30 full-size adult humans who were wedged into the tiny seats of the theater listened to the presentation with rapt attention. "Use an appropriate-sized teddy bear," the librarian running the session was saying as I walked in. I had been using one I thought was the size of a baby, but I was wrong. It was the size of a very premature baby. She pointed to a bulletin board that was covered with felt. "Don't forget, flannel boards are wonderful," she said. "You may want to use them for things like demonstrating penguins getting dressed. You can also hide things inside them, like rabbits and noses." Upstairs, Robert Morales, the library's budget director, and Madeline Rackley, the business manager, were talking about money with John Shabo, who holds the job of Los Angeles City Librarian, in charge of all the libraries in Los Angeles. Just below them, the main clock clicked toward 10, and Selena Terrazas, who is one of Central Library's 3 principal librarians, stationed herself at the center axis of the lobby so she could keep watch over the morning rush when the doors officially opened. There was a sense of stage business, that churn of activity you can't hear or see, but you feel at a theater in the instant before the curtain rises, of people finding their places and things being set right before the burst of action begins. The library entrances have been thrown open thousands of times since 1859, the year that a public library first existed in Los Angeles. Yet every time the security guard hollers out that the library has opened, there is a quickening in the air and the feeling that something significant is about to unfold, the play is about to begin. This particular morning, Selena Terrazas checked her watch, and the head of security, David Aguirre, checked his as well, and then Aguirre radioed the guard at the entrance to give the all clear. After a moment, the guard clambered off his stool and pushed the door open, letting the buttery light of the California morning spill into the entry. A puff of outside air wafted in and down the hall. Then, in an instant, people poured in. The hoverers who bolted from their posts in the garden, and the wall-sitters, and the morning fumblers, and the school groups, and the business people, and the parents with strollers heading to story time, and the students and the homeless who rushed straight to the bathrooms and then made a beeline to the computer center, and the scholars, and the time-wasters, and the readers, and the curious, and the bored, all clamoring for the Dictionary of Irish Artists, or The Hero with 1,000 Faces, or a biography of Lincoln, or Pizza Today magazine, or the complete book of progressive knitting, or photographs of watermelons in the San Fernando Valley taken in the 1960s, or Harry Potter, always Harry Potter, or any one of the millions of books, pamphlets, maps, musical scores, newspapers, and pictures the library holds in store. They were a rivering flow of humanity, a gush, and they were looking for baby name guides and biographies of Charles Parnell and maps of Indiana and suggestions from a librarian for a novel that was romantic but not corny. They were picking up tax information and getting tutored in English and checking out movies and tracing their family history. They were sitting in the library just because it was a pleasant place to sit, and sometimes they were doing things that had nothing to do with the library. On this particular morning in social sciences, a woman at one of the reading tables was sewing beads onto the sleeve of a cotton blouse. In one of the carols in history, a man in a pinstriped suit who had books on his desk but wasn't reading held a bag of Doritos under the lip of the table. He pretended to muffle a cough each time he ate a chip. So with that, I actually might stop and I'll just do a part 2 video for the 2 more pages I wanted to share that are just about Susan Orlean growing up with libraries and the nostalgia that she has for that. So that will be a much shorter video. But yeah, I just loved that writing, and to me, it just captured that atmosphere of libraries and just what they can mean to all the people who were sitting outside waiting to be let in to the city library on the morning, or the central library on the morning that she's describing. So if you watched this long, I hope you enjoyed it too. The one thing that almost made me laugh as I was just reading it out loud was the use of the adjective buttery to describe the light of the California morning. And this might just be my weird brain, but the buttery, unless it's applied to a baking dish, always makes me think now of the LuLaRoe, massive level marketing leggings, which were all the rage, and they were always described as buttery soft. And it's like, what does that even mean in an item of clothing for things to be soft like butter? So that made me almost giggle while I was just reading this out loud, because buttery light is now getting into that territory for me too, of like, what does it mean for light to be buttery? Anyway, that's an aside. Okay, so I will do part 2. So please check that out if you want to hear a much shorter excerpt that's about her emotional connection from childhood with libraries, which is something that I think many booktubers will probably identify with. All right, thanks for watching, and if you're intrigued by this book so far, I really highly suggest you pick it up. Like I said, I'm only in the early chapters still, but I think I'm going to love this book. All right, thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.